Hey, Colin, welcome to the show.
Hey, James, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
All right, so we're here to discuss your book, Culture of Excellence, which kind of looks like the New York Yankee organization and kind of how they show examples of leadership. Now, people can follow you online, cernig.com, to catch all your podcasts, your book, and all the great stuff you do, as well as follow you on Instagram, CJ Cernig, there as well if they want to again follow your stuff. So appreciate you having me on. Now you're a man of many hats. I mean, you're an author, you're a contributing writer for MLB and college football for Yardbarker. You have several different podcasts you're doing, and more importantly, you're a dad. But how do you handle this stuff and like what's like sort of your daily routine?
Yeah, well, I think it's that last thing you said. I'm primarily a dad first, and that really helps me anchor what I want to do from both a professional and a personal standpoint, every single day. So, yeah, I quit my corporate career in September of 2023, so over a year now, and I'm primarily a stay-at-home dad, two girls under four. One of them does go to school part-time. The oldest, the other one's with me all the time, but they have all their extracurriculars now. It's any parent who's listening to this knows it gets a little crazy. So I build my schedule around their life for the most part. We're doing this podcast. They're in bed right now. So it definitely sometimes it can feel a little constricting only because I have like this workaholic tendency that I've needed to quiet down for a long time, and they've really helped me pull back from it. But other than that, it's really great because I love being with them. I can even take them to for example, I did a freelance opportunity a couple years ago for the Charlotte Observer. I'm here in Charlotte, and we went to the all three of us to the soccer complex for this professional team that was going to the USL Championship, and all the players super cool, super great with my girls. My oldest was out on the field kicking the soccer ball and everything. So, yeah, it's just for me, that's my priority. The girls come first, and then whatever I can do. I'm lucky, the writing that I do and the other creative ventures that you mentioned. There's a certain level of flexibility with all of those already built in, so it's not like I'm, tied down to a traditional 9 to 5 where I have to be here doing this and doing that. So that flexibility in general is really helpful to allow me to live this lifestyle right now.
Gotcha. And I mean, was there anything, I mean, other than the kids, maybe that kind of pulled you away from the corporate world? Was this something like calling? It was like, I just got to get out of here, or was it like something gave you the itch?
Yeah, the two main things were, I had been, so I was in talent acquisition and recruiting for corporate America for a decade, and I was getting a little burnt out. Part of it is it's just naturally a very transactional type field. It's high volume. You're hiring a lot of people, but also with COVID and some of the economic challenges that had happened as a result of that, I got laid off 3 times in a 4 year period, I think it was. Um, and that starts to catch up to you, for lack of a better phrase. So I was definitely getting a little just beat down overall. And on top of that, because things, in a good way, started to, for the most part, return to normalcy after the pandemic. The bad aspect for us was we struggled to find reliable childcare for the girls. Last year was my first full year. It was incredible. I'm looking, forward to this year as well. I really I mean, I know eventually they're going to go to school full time, and I'm going to have an opportunity to do work a little bit more full time again too. I don't know what that's going to look like, but right now I'm really just trying to enjoy this time that I get with them because it's not something that everyone gets.
And I'm happy you should enjoy this period while you can. You're in a unique position, but you also do some freelance work. You mentioned before, was that with Talent 409? I mean, could you just maybe explain what that is?
Yeah, that was my leadership academy I had up until testing my years here. 2023, I believe, is when I officially shut it down. So I'd been doing that for roughly 5 or 6 years. That was working with amateur, so high school, collegiate level student athletes. Just leadership and culture, basically everything. And I know we'll get to this, the book, but yeah, I had a lot of that type of work overlapped in my recruiting career. Like we would do, people ops, pops. There's a lot of acronyms out there for it now, but we would do coaching, especially with the startups that I was in, and so I learned how to do it, through there, and then I just transferred it. I wanted to be in sports again. I'd really missed it, and I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to run my own company, I might as well, do it in sports, and that was so much fun. Even with some of the difficulties that the pandemic brought about, because as I'm sure schools got hit pretty badly. They had to cancel seasons and different things like that. So that's what I guess opened me up to my new phase, which is more writing and content creation and things like that. Otherwise, I'd probably still be doing that, given the circumstances and everything, how it panned out.
All right, I guess yes. So we're here to talk about your creation there. So culture of excellence, and people can get on your website cernig.com, and we'll put up the links like that. It's available. Now you published this in 2020, so that's right smack dab right in the middle of the COVID season. But let's just
Yeah.
go back. I mean, so initially, what I read, you weren't exactly a Yankee fan until you saw a video in '96. I mean, can you tell us that story?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it was because I didn't, like the Yankees. I went to my first Yankee game in 1995, so I got to see Mattingly and everything. I think it was more age. I turned 7 in 1996, so I'm starting to figure things out and learn things a little bit more. And then the Yankees win the World Series. I'm not even really that aware of it, but come Christmas time, I get this video. It's the 1996 World Series home video, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. Like the drama, the way that if you've ever watched, these type of things, like they're a little cheesy, I think from an outsider's perspective, but like if you're a fan of the team, I mean it's great content, great quality and everything. It's Major League Baseball production, so it's top notch. And I got lucky. I've said this, so many times. So I grew up in Syracuse, New York, back, when cable was the thing. Like that, the Yankees were the team that we got on our cable station. We used to get MSG before it was the Yes Network, and so I didn't have, like I do now, MLB TV where I could watch every team at any time. There wasn't social media. So I probably would have been a Yankee fan anyway because I loved baseball. My dad loved baseball. He's been a Yankee fan since the Mickey Mantle days. He used to go with my grandpa, take the train from Scranton, Pennsylvania to New York on Sunday doubleheaders and watch them at the old stadium, and everything. But I got really lucky that 1996 was the birth of a dynasty, and I watched so many games as a kid. I could recite lineups by memory. I would copy the stance of batters. I just knew everything, and I wanted every moment to be surrounded by the Yankees. So, yeah, I got indoctrinated in a great time. I don't know if we'll ever see that again, in baseball, which is a little, crazy to say, but it was certainly fun. And that's, yeah, really how it all started, though, was that video made me fall in love with them.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. So what I used to do sometimes, I would binge. I would take the '96, '98, '99, 2000, watch them all like four in a row for a whole afternoon. So I did that a million
Yes,
times. So
yes.
definitely understand. Yeah, no, they're very well done videos. So you come around 2019. I mean, is that like 2019 when you got the idea? Was it like I want to write a book about the Yankees, or I want to write a book about leadership, and let me find an example? Like what was your thought process on how you developed the book?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it was 2018. Very, it had to be like February of 2018. We were on our honeymoon, my wife and I. We got married the December prior, and I was rereading for about the fifth time The Last Night of the Yankee Dynasty, book by Buster Only. And as I'm reading it, yeah, I'm just like having a lot of these different thoughts because I just started the Leadership Academy at the same time. So January of 2018. And so, I'm really like in this phase of looking things through the lens of leadership, culture development, just how do people get better? How do great teams exist? I'm asking myself these questions as I'm reading things, as I'm watching things, and it didn't matter what it was, but I just happened to be reading that book again on vacation or on my honeymoon, and I said to my wife at the time, I was like, "There's definitely at least some kind of research paper that I could put together, like some kind of I don't know, freebie that I could give away on my website, things like that. Because I was like, I've read that book a few times. I had read Brian Hoke's The Baby Bombers book that had come out really recently, and a few other books, and I was like, there's just something there about the organization from about the time when I was born in 1989 to the present day, 2018 at that point. And yeah, so it started as I was just going to write like a 5 or 6 page research paper, and before I knew it, I have the SEC books still like right over here, about 7, 8 books that I owned. I ended up through the library getting 4 or 5 different. We're talking like biographies of specific players, things like Mattingly, Jorge Posada, all these type of things. And I was just soaking up everything and everything. And when I'm reading, all I'm looking for is not so much like what Tino Martinez did in the 1996 World Series, like as far as his stats. They were horrendous, and everyone who's a big Yankee fan knows that. That's not what this book was going to be about. This book was going to be about how Tino was still one of those people who when the Yankees showed up, when the Yankee players showed up every single day, they saw him working his ass off. They saw him working hard. They saw him not giving up, and that type of thing, rubbed off on other players. So that's like an example of what I was looking for when I'm reading all of this. I'm not looking so much for the nerdy baseball stats. Yeah, there's a little bit of that in there, but the book's not necessarily just for baseball people or Yankee fans, even specifically. The Yankees are just the catalyst for, hey, there's this great story about this organization that was really in a difficult position in 1989, 1990, and made a big pivot and birthed a dynasty. And yeah, there haven't been as many championships in the ensuing years, but year after year, you still hear about how great the organization is, how many people want to play for the organization. I think there's something to be said about that stability that the organization has embraced in the face of what the George Steinbrenner years were like, especially in the 80s. So yeah, it all came because I had a moment of relaxation and I just had this like I just wanted to try something different. I remember telling my wife, I was like, I could write a book. I don't know how popular these things are still, but it used to be very popular, like in the self help categories, to write something like, "Here are the 7 steps to becoming a better leader," or something like that. I was like, I could write that book really easily. The harder book would be the Yankee book because I don't have an affiliation with the organization. I'm not a reporter. Like to do research, I'm going to really have to get creative, kind of like I had to do in my talent acquisition career. So I definitely had a little bit of a head start in terms of like how to connect with people and those type of things. But I just remember saying to her, I was like, it's definitely going to be the harder of the books to write, but I think I want to do it. And she was like, well, I mean, there you go. That's your answer. And yeah, I went ahead and did it. It was a ton of fun. I probably could have done research forever because I mean, I love the Yankees and I love this topic, but had to put the book together at some point, and I'm pretty happy with what came out.
Yeah, and what I like when you just mentioned before the book, it's almost like Yankees for dummies. Like you don't have to be a baseball person, and I like how actually you structured it. You really spell everything out, like as if someone had no idea what baseball is, but no idea the Yankees is, and you kind of just define everything, like I said. And you don't have to be a baseball fan. You have to even know about the Yankees, and you're able to kind of understand, read the book, and sort of get into it. Versus a lot of baseball books like assume you know about the Yankees, and
Yeah.
you kind of spell everything out like X, Y, Z, give like a blueprint, and then you kind of get into all the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, yeah, and I had a beta reader, very specific person I chose because you're a creative person too, and sometimes I think you can just get blinded by your own visions and what you're trying to accomplish, or you just don't even realize that you're being ignorant to something because you know the topic so well. And so I said to myself, okay, I'm not writing this for Yankee fans. I'm not even writing this necessarily for baseball fans. I'm writing this for people who want to be better leaders, who want to develop really great, healthy team cultures. I had a beta reader who's uh, hates baseball, and was a lacrosse player, but so still had that competitive side to him, and everything, and understood leadership and whatever. And I was like, would you give this a read? Like, I just want to see if I'm doing this right. And he's like, okay, somebody I've known, since I was a kid. So I was like, okay, he's definitely going to tell me if it, because that's just how we always had been. Like, if not in a mean way, but like we would tell each other, like, if something was up or, whatever it was, like throughout our whole lives. And, he got back to me, several weeks later, and he was like, that first chapter with Steinbrenner, I couldn't put that down. Like, I just devoured, that whole thing. And he's got no idea who George Steinbrenner is and the legacy that he created and the name and the fame and everything that goes along with it. So I was like, okay, I'm definitely on the right track if I've got that person uh, hooked already with it all. But that was the hardest part of it, was just like not romanticizing the baseball aspect or the Yankee aspect, just like staying true to what the core purpose of the book was.
Yeah, and I think the Yankee organization, they're very unique, probably more than any other team in any other sport, is that they almost have to produce a World Series contender every season. So, like you
Right.
said before, maybe they're not winning the championships like they did in the late 90s, but there's still that expectation. Like, they can't have a year off. Even like the Red Sox, they could have like 4 bad seasons, and they're a great organization, and like it's okay. But the
Yeah.
Yankee organization has to have an excellent team every season. There's no excuses, there's no year off, there's no nothing. So they still got to maintain that certain level of quality.
Yeah, and that is I think maybe the most impressive feat of this century for the organization, but probably also the most frustrating feat for fans. A lot of them who, interestingly enough, I don't know how much you run across this, but uh, they weren't even alive when George Steinbrenner was like doing his thing, but they still hold. I mean, that's how much of a legacy this guy left behind, is that there are 20-year-olds out there who are like, well, George would have done it this way. And I'm like, well, you never even saw George do it. Like, what are you talking about? And everything. But yeah, Nick Saban, the legendary head coach Alabama, talks about this, I think, in a really unique way. But he talks about how your self-determination is your responsibility. And a lot of people think that it's like the coach's responsibility to drive you or something else. And that was something like Jorge Posada talked about it a lot. Tino talked about it a lot from those dynasty teams. Obviously, Jeter, embodied it throughout his career, connected us to the 2014 when he retired. CC, kind of carried that over into the baby bomber era, and now Judgy, with this current era, and it is that self-determination not to quit even when you are doing well, because as we all know, like, that's where the complacency comes in. Like, it would be really easy to say, like, okay, when was it 22, when they won 99 games, and things started to go off the wheels a little bit in 23. They could have just given up on the season and maybe won like 72 games, 73 games, 67 games, who knows. 83 wins, isn't anything to write home about, or 82 wins, isn't anything to write home about at the end of the season when you're the New York Yankees. But the fact that they, kept fighting and then put themselves in a position where this past season they had an opportunity to go to the World Series, like, all those things compound over time. And I think that's what gets lost in the George Steinbrenner, we need to win the World Series every year, type mentality, is like what they do on a daily basis carries over to a weekly, to a monthly, to a yearly, and it's just it connects, literally connects from like Don Mattingly all the way to Aaron Judge. And it's just really incredible that the select players who embody that type of personality and embody that type of drive, keep that level of play within the organization really high, like that bar really high. You like you said, you just don't see it very often in other industries because or in other organizations because the Red Sox, how many years have they finished last? Yeah, they have four World Series titles this century, but does that it's like what do you want though? At the end of the day, like, do you want to give yourself a chance every single year to win the World Series, or do you want to sell out, every 5 to 10 years? Like and you have to get lucky, right? Like who knows when the Red Sox are going to win the World Series again? Maybe they win it next year and we all look crazy and whatever, but they may not win another World Series for another 30 years and it's like, okay, well, what were they doing that 20-year period, when they won those four World Series and they were up and down and up and down and um yeah, I just think there's something special about the way that the organization is able to connect past generations, but keep that level of self-determination and that grit. That's what builds their excellence, in my opinion.
And so for your book, the writing process, I mean, did you have to go through many drafts? I mean, were there times maybe you even thought about quitting, halfway through,
Yeah,
this is not working out, I don't know. I mean, like, what was your mindset until you finally got it published?
the research part was the easiest. That was the most fun, because you're just soaking it all in, you're taking notes. I think that was maybe the hardest part was like I had so many notes but I had no idea how to formulate them into a book. Like it was just pages of notes on a Google Doc. And so what I ended up doing was we were in our old apartment in Charlotte at the time when I started this. I printed it out. So it's, several pages. I can't remember, maybe a dozen or so pages of notes, and I cut them out. So each note is like a little strip, this big or so, and I'm on the floor in the room of the old apartment that I'm in, and I just start putting them on the ground and try to create different categories like, okay, this is player development, this is coaching, this is the front office and everything. So I started with some bigger piles of more general ideas, and then I broke it down from there. I was like, okay, this is Cashman, this is Stick Michael, this is Booney, this is Girardi, this is Torrey. Like break those all down and everything. And that was the part where I think like in between the research and actually starting to write the book was I never got close to quitting. I wouldn't say like I ever had a moment where I wanted to quit. Um, but that was the hardest moment was just to get going with the actual writing. Because once I got going with the writing, like I got excited and a lot of ideas came and a lot got cut. At the end of the day, but um, it was still fun to just try to piece it together. And then, I had really great editors who, I mean, that part of it was just so vital. The developmental edit part of everything to make it cohesive, um, make sure all the storylines were connecting and then wrapping up properly. Like there was just so much that went into it that I was just like, oh, I'm just going to tell a story. But there were all these little details that, thankfully there are professionals out there who do really great work and explain it to you and help you along. So yeah, I never got to like a serious I want to quit phase because it really was such a fun project. But transitioning from research to actually writing because of the amount of research I did, um, yeah, that was a little overwhelming at times for sure.
All right, so the book again, it's Culture of Excellence. They could catch it on your website, cernig.com. Is there any other areas where people can find the book?
Yeah, it's available online, wherever. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble. On the website, I have the buttons for all the online options. You can buy directly from me. I can send you a copy as well, inscribe it, whatever works. But yeah, it's pretty much available wherever online.
Obviously, a Yankee fan. We're looking, a couple of weeks away from pitches and catches. What do you feel about this team? I mean, do you like the fact they let Soto walk? Did you want Soto? I mean, what's your feelings on this 2025 Yankee squad?
Yeah, I don't think I could sit here realistically say that I was happy about letting Soto get away. What I told my friends and what I wrote about on Yard Barker, even before actually, because as you know, the it's not like the it's not like the Soto signing happened right after the World Series. There was a little bit of time, and I did a little bit of research specifically into his defense, and because I just started thinking like, at the time it was reported $500 million for Soto, and I was like, well, even that sounds crazy, and that ends up being, 765 or whatever the, final number was. But, I start looking at his defense and everything, and I'm like, are we really like when I say we, I mean the Yankees, like, are the Yankees really going to give somebody this much money when they already have Judge, Stanton, these people in the outfield who they're not getting any younger, they're not getting any better defensively. They need to take way more designated hitter at bats than they've been doing in the past. Judge specifically, like, are we really gonna tie this up and then have Soto playing left field or right field in a few years when he's a negative, 7 run save defender on Baseball Savant? Like, it just seems a little crazy because, like, if you take away his defense and you just make him a hitter, yeah, he's got a little bit of pop and power now, and he's going to go through his prime years. But when you take that away, when it starts to decline in about 4 or 5 years, like, what are you looking at over the course of the back end? What it'll be 10 years on his current contract because he signed a 15-year deal. So I'm definitely a little conflicted on the length. I think that's what bothered me the most. Outlook for 2025, I'm an optimist by nature. Uh, I worry about the age of the team. It's crept up, a few times over the past few seasons. And defensively, I don't think they've really done anything amazing right now to get better. And I don't want anyone to have to think about that fifth inning of the World Series again. But
Hmm.
we all know, we all know what happened there. So I think the division is definitely winnable. The Blue Jays don't scare me at all. The Rays are having some tough times right now. The Orioles have done almost nothing to get better, which is appalling if you're an Orioles fan. And the Red Sox have some talent, but do they have enough arms to get through 162 games? I don't know.
So, Colin, thank you for this time. Just appreciate getting to learn about you, and I wish you continued success with the book. And again, maybe next year, you'll be writing another book about the 2025 championship. How about that?
That would be great, James. I could only wish for that. But thank you so much for the time. I appreciate the opportunity to come on your show.
Yeah.